The Zereth Empire had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. They had conquered more than 400 worlds. They had crushed every species that stood against them. Their ships were the most powerful in known space. Their soldiers were bred for war. Their technology was so advanced that younger races thought it was magic. When the Empire found Earth, they laughed. High Lord Keithan sat on his command throne aboard the flagship Eternal Dominion. He was old for a Zereth, nearly 300 years, and he had seen more conquests than he could remember. His gray skin was covered in ritual scars, each one marking a world he had personally helped subjugate. He looked at the blue planet on his view screen and felt nothing but boredom. "Report," he said. His science officer, a younger Zereth named Vexenar, stepped forward. "The planet is called Earth by its inhabitants. They call themselves humans, population approximately 8 billion. They have primitive nuclear technology, basic space travel limited to their own moon, and communication networks that rely on electromagnetic signals." Keith Van made a sound of disgust. "They have not even discovered fold space travel." "No, High Lord. They are at least 200 years from that discovery. Assuming they survive that long, they will not." Kevon waved his hand dismissively. "Standard invasion protocol. Send the broadcast." The Empire had a system for conquest. It was efficient, and it had worked for 10,000 years. First, they would appear above a planet's major population centers. Then, they would broadcast their demands in every local language. Surrender was always the only option given. Most species surrendered immediately. Those who did not were made into examples. The broadcast went out across Earth on a Tuesday morning. It was spring in the Northern Hemisphere. Children were going to school. People were driving to work. Coffee shops were opening. And then suddenly, every screen on the planet showed the same image. The face of High Lord Kevon. He was terrifying to look at. His head was elongated, his eyes were solid black, and his mouth was filled with small, sharp teeth. His gray skin seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. When he spoke, his voice was cold and empty of any feeling. "People of Earth, I am High Lord Kevon of the Zerathi Empire. Your world now belongs to us. You will surrender immediately. All governments will dissolve. All military forces will disarm. All citizens will report to collection centers for processing and assignment. Resistance will result in death. This is not a negotiation. This is not a request. You have 1 hour to comply." The broadcast ended. For a moment, Earth was silent. 8 billion people stared at their screens, trying to understand what they had just seen. Some thought it was a joke. Some thought it was a movie promotion. Some fell to their knees and prayed, and some got angry. In Washington, D.C., the President of the United States was rushed to a bunker beneath the White House. His generals surrounded him, speaking rapidly. Satellite images showed massive alien ships hovering over every major city on Earth. Each ship was at least 5 kilometers long. They blocked out the sun. "Sir," said General Morrison, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, "we need to respond." "With what?" asked the president. "We have nothing that can touch those ships." "We don't know that, sir. We haven't tried." The president looked at the images again. New York, Los Angeles, London, Paris, Beijing, Moscow, Tokyo, every capital, every major city shadowed by alien vessels. "They're asking us to surrender," he said quietly. "They're demanding it," General Morrison corrected. "There's a difference." "What difference does it make? Look at those ships. Look at the size of them. We can't fight that." General Morrison was a tall woman with gray hair and a face that looked like it was carved from stone. She had served in 3 wars. She had buried friends. She had given orders that killed people. And she had never backed down from a fight in her life. "Sir," she said, "I don't know if we can win, but I know we can fight. And I know that if we surrender without fighting, we deserve whatever they do to us." Similar conversations were happening in bunkers and war rooms around the world. In Moscow, the Russian president ordered his nuclear forces to stand by. In Beijing, the Chinese military began mobilizing. In London, the Prime Minister made a simple announcement: "We will not surrender." The hour passed. Earth did not surrender. High Lord Cathon was surprised. Not concerned, just surprised. It had been a long time since a species had chosen to resist. He found it almost refreshing. "Begin the pacification," he ordered. The Zerathi invasion force descended on Earth like a plague. Dropships fell from the bellies of the great vessels, each one carrying hundreds of soldiers. They landed in city centers, in military bases, in farmland and forest. The soldiers marched out in perfect formation, their weapons humming with energy. Earth's militaries fought back with everything they had. In the skies over Washington, F-35 fighters engaged Zerath interceptors. The human jets were fast and agile, their pilots skilled and brave, but the alien craft were faster, and their weapons could destroy a plane with a single shot. The air battle lasted less than 20 minutes. Every human aircraft was destroyed. On the ground, soldiers fired rifles and rockets at the advancing Zerathi. The aliens wore armor that could stop bullets. Their shields could deflect grenades. Their weapons fired beams of energy that could cut a tank in half. But humans kept fighting. In Berlin, a young German soldier named Klaus Richter watched his entire squad die in the first 2 minutes of combat. He was hiding behind a burned car, his rifle useless against the aliens walking down the street toward him. He knew he was going to die. He accepted it. He pulled the pin on his last grenade, stood up, and ran toward the nearest Zerath soldier. He got close enough to see his own reflection in the alien's black eyes before the grenade exploded. The alien's armor held. Klaus Richter died for nothing, but he died fighting. Stories like this happened all over the world. In Tokyo, an old man drove his truck into a group of Zerathi soldiers. In Cairo, teenagers threw rocks at alien vehicles. In Sao Paulo, a grandmother fired a hunting rifle from her apartment window until they burned the building down. None of it mattered. Not in a military sense. Human weapons could barely scratch Zerathi armor. Human vehicles were toys compared to alien war machines. Human soldiers were brave, but bravery alone cannot stop an enemy that is simply too powerful. Within 48 hours, organized military resistance on Earth had ended. The governments fell one by one. The President of the United States was killed when a Zerathi strike team breached his bunker. The Chinese premier was captured alive and publicly executed. The Russian president launched his nuclear weapons in a final act of defiance. The nuclear missiles rose from their silos, hundreds of them, carrying enough power to destroy the world several times over. They raced toward the alien ships hovering above Earth's cities. High Lord Caithfan watched them come on his view screen. He almost smiled. "Activate planetary defense grid," he said calmly. A wave of energy pulsed out from the Zerathi fleet. Every nuclear missile exploded harmlessly in the upper atmosphere, still miles from their targets. The night sky lit up like a second sunrise, and then it was over. Humanity's greatest weapons had been useless. By the end of the third day, Earth belonged to the Zerath Empire. High Lord Caithfan walked through the ruins of New York City with an escort of elite guards. The streets were filled with rubble and bodies. Fires still burned in some buildings. The air smelled like smoke and death. He stepped over a human corpse without looking at it. "Interesting species," he said to his aide, Vexnar. They knew they could not win, yet they fought anyway. "I have not seen such stubbornness in centuries." "It is inefficient," Vexnar replied. "They wasted resources and lives for nothing, perhaps. But there is something to admire in it in a primitive way, like watching an insect bite a predator, even as it is being eaten." They stopped at what had once been Times Square. The massive screens were dark now, shattered by weapons fire. Human survivors were being herded into groups by Zerathi soldiers. They would be sorted and assigned to labor castes. The young and strong would work in mines and factories. The weak and old would be disposed of. Children would be raised to serve the Empire. It was the same process the Zerath had used on 400 worlds. It worked. It always worked. A human woman broke away from one of the groups and ran toward Kethvi. She was screaming something in her language. He did not bother to translate it. A guard raised his weapon, but Kethvan stopped him with a gesture. The woman reached him and began beating her fists against his chest. She was crying. Her hands left no marks on his armor. She was so weak, so fragile, so utterly harmless. "Why?" she screamed. "Why did you do this? We never did anything to you." Keith Van looked down at her with his black eyes. He felt nothing. Not hatred, not pity, not guilt. She was simply an animal making noise. "You had something we wanted," he said in her language. "Your planet, your resources, your labor. That is all the reason the Empire needs." He nodded to his guard. The guard grabbed the woman and dragged her back to the group. She kept screaming until they silenced her. Kevon continued his walk through the conquered city. In the weeks that followed, the occupation took shape. Zarathi administrators arrived to organize the planet's new role in the Empire. Cities were converted into work camps. Factories were retooled to produce goods for alien markets. Humans learned their new place in the galaxy at the very bottom. Keith Van sent his report to the Empire. Earth had been pacified with minimal Zarathi casualties. The native species was adequately suited for labor. The planet's resources were valuable, but not exceptional. It was a successful conquest, if an unremarkable one. He was already thinking about his next assignment. But there was one thing Keth had failed to notice. One thing he could not understand, because no Zarathi had ever encountered it before. Humanity was not broken. In the ruins, and the camps, in the mines and the factories, humans watched their conquerors. They studied them. They learned their language, their technology, their habits, their weaknesses. They smiled and obeyed while hatred burned in their hearts. They did not accept defeat. They simply decided to wait. In a hidden bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains, a group of survivors gathered around a table. They were scientists, soldiers, and engineers, the best that remained of humanity's brightest minds. They had escaped the invasion by luck or cunning. Now they had a single purpose. General Yuki Tanaka, formerly of the Japanese Self-Defense Forces, stood at the head of the table. She was 42 years old. She had lost her husband and son in the invasion. She had nothing left but her mission. "The war is not over," she said quietly. "It has just begun. Today we start planning for the day we take our world back. And after that, we take revenge." No one laughed. No one said it was impossible. They had all seen too much death to believe in impossible things anymore. One of the scientists, an American physicist named David Chen, spoke up. "General, I managed to salvage some of their technology from crashed vehicles. If we can study it, learn how it works, we might be able to build weapons that can hurt them." "How long?" "Years, maybe decades. I won't lie to you. Their technology is centuries ahead of ours." Tanaka nodded. "Then we have work to do. The aliens think they have won. They think we are animals, good only for labor. Let them keep thinking that. Let them grow comfortable. Let them forget that we ever fought back." She looked around the table at the tired, desperate faces of her companions. "They made one mistake," she said. "They let us live. They do not understand what humans are capable of when we have nothing left to lose. They do not know that we can hate for generations. They do not know that we will sacrifice everything for revenge." She placed her hands flat on the table. "The Zarathi Empire has existed for 10,000 years. They have never been defeated, but they have never faced us. They have never faced a species that would burn their own world to ashes if it meant taking their enemies with them." Her voice was cold, calm, and absolutely certain. "One day we will make them pay for what they have done. Every death, every crime, every moment of suffering, we will repay it 1,000 times over. They came to our home as conquerors. They will leave as corpses in the darkness of the bunker." Surrounded by the ruins of human civilization, the survivors of Earth began to plan. Above them, the Zareth ships orbited peacefully, their crews unaware of the storm that was gathering below. They had conquered another world. They had crushed another species. Everything was as it should be. They did not understand that they had made a terrible mistake. The Zarathi had built their empire on fear and power. They believed that superior technology and overwhelming force could conquer anything. They had never encountered a species that would fight without hope. They had never met beings who would suffer for years while planning destruction. They had never faced the cold, patient fury of a wounded predator waiting for the perfect moment to strike. They had never faced humanity, and by the time they understood their error, it would be far too late. In the labor camps, humans worked and died and kept silent. In the mines, they dug ore for their masters and dreamed of fire. In the cities, they served their conquerors and counted the days. Somewhere, in hidden places, scientists studied stolen technology. Somewhere, soldiers trained with captured weapons. Somewhere, generals drew plans for a war that had not yet begun. The Zerothi had won the battle for Earth, but the war, the real war, was just getting started. And humanity never forgives. And humanity never forgets. 5 years had passed since the invasion. Earth was not the same planet it had been. The great cities that humans had built over centuries were now work camps. The skyscrapers of New York held dormitories where thousands of humans slept in shifts. The factories of China produced goods that would be shipped to alien worlds humans would never see. The farms of America grew food that fed Zerothi soldiers. Everywhere humans worked, and everywhere humans died. The Zerothi had a simple system for managing conquered species. They divided the population into castes based on usefulness. The strongest and healthiest humans became labor workers. They mined, built, farmed, and manufactured. The intelligent ones became technical workers. They maintained machines, managed logistics, and solved problems their masters could not be bothered with. The children were taken to special facilities where they were raised to be loyal servants of the empire. Those who did not fit into any useful category were eliminated in the first year of occupation. 2 billion humans died. Some died from violence. Some died from starvation. Some died from diseases that spread through the overcrowded camps. Some simply gave up and stopped living. By the 5th year, Earth's population had fallen from 8 billion to 4 billion. Half of humanity was gone, but the other half remained, and they were learning. In a labor camp outside what had once been Moscow, a man named Victor Clove pushed a cart full of broken machine parts. He was thin and tired, his face lined with exhaustion. He had been a professor of physics before the invasion. Now he was just another worker, moving pieces of metal from one place to another. A Zerothi guard walked past him without a second look. To the guard, Victor was invisible, just another human animal doing its job. Victor smiled to himself. Hidden beneath the broken parts in his cart was a working Zerothi power cell. It had taken him 3 weeks to steal it. Piece by piece, smuggling components from the recycling facility where he worked. Tonight, he would pass it to a contact who would take it to the underground. Tomorrow, scientists in a hidden bunker would study it, learn from it, and bring humanity one step closer to revenge. This was how the resistance worked. Slowly, carefully, invisibly. The Zerothi believed they had crushed all opposition. They were wrong. General Yuki Tanaka stood in the command center of the Cheyenne Mountain Complex, the hidden base beneath the Rocky Mountains, where the resistance had been born. In 5 years, it had grown from a handful of survivors to a network that spanned the globe. They had people in every camp, every factory, every work detail. They had eyes everywhere the Zerothi looked, and ears in places the aliens did not even know existed. "Report," she said. Colonel James Wright, her second in command, pulled up a holographic display. It showed a map of Earth marked with thousands of small dots, each one a resistance cell. "We have confirmed assets in every major population center," he said. "Our supply network is moving materials at a rate of approximately 200 kilograms per week. We have successfully extracted 17 Zeroth weapons, 3 shield generators, 2 communication devices, and the power cell that arrived last night. What about research? Dr. Chen's team has made a breakthrough." Wright's voice carried a hint of excitement, something that had become rare in the dark years. "They think they understand how the Zerothi shields work. More importantly, they think they know how to break them." Tanaka allowed herself a small smile. "Tell me the shields are powered by a specific energy frequency. If we can generate a counter frequency, we can collapse the shield entirely. It's like Wright searched for the right words. It's like finding the right note to shatter glass. Every shield has a weakness. We just need to find the right note for each one. How long until we can build a weapon that uses this principle? Dr. Chen estimates 2 more years of development. We need more components, more power cells, more time." "We have time," Tanaka said. "The Zerothi think we are broken. Let them keep thinking that." She turned to look at a wall covered with photographs. Each photo showed a face, a human who had died in the invasion, or the occupation that followed. There were thousands of them, and new ones were added every week. "Every day we wait, more of us die," she said quietly. "But every day we wait, we grow stronger. The aliens do not understand patience. They do not understand how long humans can hate. They do not understand that we are not waiting for rescue. We are building our own salvation. Far away from the bunker, in a labor camp in what had once been Germany, a young woman named Anna Schmidt was teaching children to read. This was forbidden. The Zerothi did not allow humans to educate themselves. An educated slave was a dangerous slave. But Anna had found a way. She worked in a food distribution center during the day. At night, she gathered the children of her camp in a hidden basement and taught them by candlelight. She taught them letters and numbers. She taught them history and science. And she taught them something else, something that was not in any book. She taught them to remember. Before the aliens came, she told them humans built towers that touched the clouds. We flew through the sky in metal birds. We sent people to walk on the moon. We created music and art and stories that made people laugh and cry. We were not slaves. We were free. The children listened with wide eyes. Most of them had been born after the invasion. They had never known a world without Zeroth masters. Freedom was just a word to them. "Will we ever be free again?" asked a small boy named Peter. Anna looked at him. He was 7 years old. His father had died in the mines. His mother had been taken away last month and never came back. He had no one in the world except Anna and the other children in this room. "Yes," she said. "One day we will be free, but it will not be given to us. We will have to take it." "How?" Anna smiled. It was not a happy smile. "We wait," she said. "We learn. We grow strong. And when the time comes, we fight. Not like before, not running at them with sticks and stones. We fight with their own weapons. We fight with their own technology. We fight smarter than they think we can." She reached under her coat and pulled out a small device. It looked like a Zerothi weapon, but smaller, cruder. It had been built in a secret workshop by resistance engineers using stolen parts. "This is called hope," she said. "Someday we will have enough of these for everyone. And on that day, the Zerothi will learn what happens when you push humans too far." The children stared at the weapon with something new in their eyes. Something that had been beaten out of most humans during the occupation. It was hope, and it was dangerous. In orbit above Earth, the Zerothi occupation fleet continued its routine patrols. Commander Thexvul stood on the bridge of his cruiser and watched the planet below with bored contempt. He had been assigned to this post as a punishment. He had offended a superior officer and been sent to oversee a pacified world, the most boring duty in the Empire. Nothing ever happened on conquered planets. The natives worked, the resources flowed, and time passed in endless tedium. "Commander," his sensor officer said, "I am detecting unusual energy readings in the northern continent, Dexville." "What kind of readings?" "Small power signatures. They appear and disappear quickly. They could be malfunctioning equipment. Or what?" The sensor officer hesitated. "Or hidden technology." Texval considered this for a moment. Hidden technology meant the humans were building something. That was supposed to be impossible. They were watched constantly, their movements tracked, their communications monitored. But the readings were there. "Send a ground team to investigate," he said. "Probably nothing. These creatures barely understood how to use their own primitive devices. I doubt they could do anything with ours." "Yes, Commander." Dexville turned back to the view screen and forgot about the matter entirely. This was a mistake. The ground team found nothing. The resistance had learned to hide their activities. Well, they knew when patrols were coming. They knew how to make power signatures disappear. They had spent 5 years learning every detail of how the Zerothi operated, their schedules, their habits, their blind spots. The occupation force saw only obedient workers. They did not see the hatred behind the lowered eyes. They did not hear the whispered plans. They did not notice that humans were changing. In a hidden laboratory beneath the Swiss Alps, Dr. David Chen stared at a holographic model of a Zerothi shield generator. He had been studying alien technology for 5 years. He had aged 20 years in that time. His hair was gray, his eyes were tired, and his hands shook from too much coffee and too little sleep. But he was smiling. "I've got it," he said to his team. "I finally understand how their shields work." His assistant, a young woman named Maria Santos, looked up from her console. "Really? The shields aren't just energy barriers. They're probability fields. They calculate the most likely trajectory of incoming threats and reinforce against them. That's why our weapons don't work. The shields predict where our bullets and missiles will go and block them before they arrive. So, how do we beat that? Chen's smile widened. We stop being predictable. Their shields calculate based on straight-line trajectories and standard energy patterns. If we create weapons that fire in random patterns, weapons that even we cannot predict, the shields won't be able to calculate fast enough to stop them. Maria frowned. Weapons we can't predict. How do we aim them? We don't. We create a field of destruction so complete that aiming becomes unnecessary. We overwhelm their calculations with chaos. He pulled up a new diagram. I call it scatter fire technology. Instead of one bullet going one direction, imagine 1,000 fragments going in 1,000 directions at once. The shield might stop 900 of them, but a 100 will get through, and a 100 is enough. He turned to face his team. There were 12 of them. Physicists, engineers, chemists, the best minds humanity had left. They had worked for 5 years in secret, knowing that if they were discovered, they would be killed immediately. This is just the beginning, Chen said. We can use the same principle for energy weapons, for missiles, for bombs. We can build an entire arsenal based on unpredictability, and the Zereth won't know how to stop us, because their entire military philosophy is based on calculating and controlling everything. When can we start building? Maria asked. We need more resources, more power cells, more time. I estimate 3 more years before we have functional prototypes. 3 more years. Maria closed her eyes. How many more of us will die in 3 years? Many, Chan admitted. But if we rush this, if we act before we're ready, we will lose everything. The Zerathi will crush us, and this time they will not leave survivors. We have one chance to do this right. One chance. Don't. He looked at the faces of his team. They were all exhausted. They had all lost people they loved. They all wanted the war to begin now. This moment. I know it's hard, he said. I know you want revenge. I want it too. But revenge is patient. The best revenge is the one that succeeds, and we will succeed. I promise you that. Meanwhile, in the Resistance Command Center, General Tanaka was receiving reports from around the world. In Asia, resistance cells had successfully sabotaged 3 mining operations, delaying ore shipments by weeks. In Europe, an underground network was smuggling children out of Zereth education facilities before they could be fully indoctrinated. In Africa, farmers were secretly growing food for human consumption instead of alien exports. In South America, engineers were building hidden weapons caches in the ruins of old cities. Everywhere, humanity was resisting. Not openly, not yet, but in 1,000 small ways that the Zereth never noticed. We are getting stronger, Colonel Wright reported. Our numbers have grown by 30% this year. We have weapons caches in every continent. We have people in key positions in the alien administration, and morale is higher than it's ever been. Morale is not enough, Tanaka said. We need weapons. We need a plan. We need a moment when we can strike and actually win. When Tanaka looked at the map of Earth, so much had been lost. So many had died, but humanity was still here, still fighting, still hoping. Soon, she said. Dr. Chen says, 3 more years. We can hold for 3 more years. We can build. We can prepare. We can wait. And then she did not finish the sentence. She did not need to. Everyone knew what would happen then. In the camps and the factories, in the mines and the fields, humans continued to work and suffer and die. The Zerothi continued to watch them with contempt, seeing only beasts of burden, seeing only broken slaves. They did not see the fire in human eyes. They did not hear the whispers in the dark. They did not understand that every act of cruelty, every death, every moment of suffering was being recorded, remembered, and added to a debt that would one day be paid in full. The dark years were hard, but they were also necessary. In the darkness, humanity forged itself into something new, something harder, colder, and more dangerous than anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Zereth had conquered hundreds of species. They had turned proud warriors into obedient servants. They believed they had done the same to humanity. They were wrong. Humanity was not being broken. Humanity was being sharpened. Like a blade in a fire, the suffering burned away everything soft and weak. What remained was steel, and steel does not forget. In her command center, General Tanaka looked at the photographs on the wall one more time. Thousands of faces, thousands of deaths, thousands of reasons to keep fighting. 3 more years, she whispered to the dead. Wait for us, we are coming, and when we do, we will bring such fury that the galaxy itself will tremble. She turned off the lights and went to sleep. Above her, the Zarathi ships orbited peacefully, their crews unaware of the storm gathering below. They had no idea what was coming, but they would learn. Oh, they would learn. 6 years after the invasion, at exactly 3 o'clock in the morning, Greenwich Mean Time, every Zarathi communication satellite orbiting Earth went dark. The blackout lasted only 14 seconds. That was enough. In those 14 seconds, the Zarathi occupation force was blind. Their sensors showed nothing. Their communications carried nothing. Their ships could not talk to their ground forces. Their ground forces could not talk to each other. And in those 14 seconds, humanity struck. Commander Thuxval was sleeping in his quarters aboard the orbital cruiser when the alarm started screaming. He jumped from his bed and ran to the bridge, still pulling on his uniform. "Report," he shouted. His tactical officer was staring at his console with a look of complete confusion. "Commander, I don't understand. Our satellites are back online, but we're receiving distress calls from the surface. Hundreds of them. What kind of distress calls? All kinds. Military installations under attack. Ground forces taking casualties. Supply depots destroyed." The officer looked up, his black eyes wide with something that might have been fear. "Commander, the humans are attacking." Devul felt his blood go cold. "That's impossible. They have no weapons. They have no organization. They're slaves. They have weapons now, Commander, and they're using them." On the surface of Earth, the war for liberation had begun. In Berlin, a team of resistance fighters attacked the Zarath Regional Command Center with weapons that should not have existed. Their guns fired not bullets, but clouds of metal fragments that moved in unpredictable patterns. Zarathi shields designed to stop direct attacks collapsed under the chaos. Alien soldiers fell by the dozens. In Beijing, resistance engineers activated a device they had spent 3 years building. It sent out a pulse that disrupted every piece of Zarathi technology within 10 kilometers. Vehicles stopped, weapons failed, communication devices went silent, and then the human soldiers came armed with captured alien weapons and homemade explosives. In New York, in Moscow, in London, in Tokyo, in Cairo, in Sao Paulo, in every city, on every continent, humans rose up against their masters. General Yuki Tanaka watched the reports coming in from her command center. For 6 years, she had planned this night. For 6 years, she had gathered weapons, trained soldiers, positioned assets, and now, finally, the plan was unfolding. Berlin Command Center is down. Colonel Wright reported Beijing garrison neutralized. London spaceport captured. We have control of 17 major cities and climbing. Casualties heavy. We expected that. But we're inflicting heavier casualties on them. Tanaka nodded. She had known the cost would be high. Freedom was never free. But every human who died tonight died fighting, not as a slave. "What about the orbital fleet?" she asked. "Still in chaos. Our communications blackout worked better than expected. They're struggling to coordinate their response. They'll recover soon. We need to press our advantage while we have it." In a labor camp outside Moscow, Victor Klov, the former physics professor who had spent years smuggling alien technology, led a group of freed prisoners toward the camp's armory. They were armed with whatever they had been able to find. Stolen weapons, improvised explosives, metal pipes and rocks. It did not matter. They were fighting, and that was what mattered. A Zarathi soldier appeared in front of them, raising his weapon. Victor did not hesitate. He had waited 6 years for this moment. He raised his own weapon, a crude scattergun built in a resistance workshop, and fired. The alien's shield flickered and died. The soldier looked down at his chest at the dozens of small holes that had appeared there. He looked up at Victor with an expression of pure surprise. "Impossible," he whispered. "Nothing is impossible," Victor said. You taught us that. He fired again. Across the planet, the same scene played out thousands of times. Zarathi soldiers who had grown comfortable in their role as occupiers suddenly found themselves facing enemies who were no longer helpless. The shields that had protected them for 6 years failed against weapons designed specifically to defeat them. The tactics that had worked against countless species were useless against an enemy that had studied them for years. The aliens had made a terrible mistake. They had assumed that conquered species stayed conquered. They had assumed that humans were like the hundreds of other races they had defeated, capable of accepting their place at the bottom of the galaxy. They were wrong. In the ruins of what had once been Chicago, Anna Schmidt, the woman who had taught children in secret, led a group of fighters toward a Zarath communications tower. If they could capture it, the resistance would be able to broadcast across the entire continent. "Remember what I taught you," she said to her team. They were young. Many of them were the children she had educated in that hidden basement. They had grown up knowing only occupation. Now they were fighting for a freedom they had never experienced. "We remember," said Peter, the small boy who had once asked if they would ever be free. He was 13 now, and he carried a weapon almost as big as he was. "We remember everything." The assault on the tower was brief and brutal. The Zarathi defenders never expected humans to attack such a heavily guarded target. They certainly never expected humans to be armed with weapons that could penetrate their shields. 20 minutes after the assault began, Anna stood at the tower's control console. The communications equipment was damaged but functional. She opened a channel to every Zarathi receiver on the continent. "My name is Anna Schmidt," she said. Her voice was calm and clear. "I was a teacher before your empire came to Earth. For 6 years, I have watched my people suffer and die under your rule. For 6 years, I have waited for this moment." She paused. "Tonight, the humans of Earth have risen against you. We have weapons that can defeat your shields. We have soldiers who do not fear death. We have a fury that has been building for 6 years, and we are ready to unleash it." She smiled into the camera. "You thought you had broken us. You were wrong. You cannot break something that is willing to be shattered in order to cut you. You cannot defeat an enemy that would rather die than submit. You cannot conquer a species that knows how to hate." She leaned forward. "This is our world. We are taking it back. And when we are done here, we are coming for you. Every planet you have conquered, every species you have enslaved, every crime you have committed, we know about all of it, and we will make you pay for everything." She reached for the console. "Earth is no longer a colony of the Zarathi Empire. Earth is the first battleground of the human-Zarathi War. And we will win this war, not because we are stronger than you, not because we are smarter than you, but because we want victory more than we want life itself." She cut the transmission. In orbit, Commander Thexval watched the broadcast with growing horror. This was not possible. This could not be happening. Humans were primitives, barely more than animals. They could not organize a planetary uprising. They could not build weapons that defeated Zarathi technology. They could not, Commander. His tactical officer's voice cut through his thoughts. "Ground forces are reporting massive losses. We've lost contact with 40% of our installations. Send reinforcements. Call for orbital strikes. Our ground forces are too intermixed with the humans. Commander, we cannot strike without killing our own soldiers. And our reinforcements are having trouble reaching the combat zones. The humans have destroyed the road networks." The Vul stared at the view screen at the planet that had been a quiet conquest just hours ago. Fires were burning across the night side. Human cities that had been work camps were now battlefields. "How?" he whispered. "How is this possible?" No one answered him. On the ground, the battle raged for 3 days. The resistance had planned well. They knew they could not defeat the Zarathi in a straight fight, even with their new weapons. They were outnumbered and outgunned. So they did not fight straight. They fought dirty. They used the terrain they knew better than any alien ever could. They attacked at night when their knowledge of the darkness gave them an advantage. They set traps, ambushes, and diversions. They made every street, every building, every inch of ground a death trap for their enemies. And they used tactics the Zarath had never seen. In one battle, a group of resistance fighters allowed themselves to be surrounded. The Zarathi commander ordered them to surrender. Instead, The fighters activated explosives they had strapped to their own bodies. The explosion killed 20 alien soldiers. In another battle, human soldiers retreated into a building and barricaded themselves inside. When the Zereth forces followed them in, they found the building was filled with gas. The humans had already evacuated through hidden tunnels. The aliens had no time to escape before the spark ignited. These tactics horrified the Zerathi. They had a code of war, rules that all civilized species followed. You did not sacrifice your own soldiers deliberately. You did not use suicide attacks. You did not turn yourself into a weapon. Humans did not care about their rules. General Tanaka had explained it to her soldiers before the uprising. The Zerathi fight to win. We fight to destroy. There is a difference. A soldier who fights to win will retreat when the battle is lost. A soldier who fights to destroy will take as many enemies with them as possible. That is our advantage. They are afraid to die. We are not. It was true. After 6 years of occupation, after watching friends and family die in camps and mines, the humans who fought had already accepted their own deaths. They were not fighting for themselves. They were fighting for revenge. And a soldier who does not fear death is the most dangerous soldier in the galaxy. By the end of the 3rd day, the Zereth occupation force was in ruins. They had lost 40% of their ground troops. Their command structure had been shattered. Their communication networks were barely functional. Their supply lines had been cut, and worst of all, their morale was broken. For the first time in 10,000 years, Zereth soldiers were afraid. Commander Thexvul made a decision that had never been made in the history of the Empire. He ordered a retreat. All ground forces, evacuate to orbit immediately. He broadcast, I repeat, evacuate to orbit. This is not a drill. We are withdrawing from the surface. His officers looked at him with shock. Commander, we cannot abandon a planet. One of them said, The Empire will what? Court-martial me for refusing to waste more soldiers. Look at those casualty reports. We have lost more troops in 3 days than we have lost in the last century of conquests. These humans are not like other species. They are something else. He turned to face his crew. I am sending a message to the Imperial fleet. We need reinforcements. Not a patrol force. Not an occupation garrison. A war fleet. We need enough ships to crack this planet if necessary. You would destroy the planet, kill all the humans. Dexville's black eyes were cold. If that is what it takes. The evacuation took 12 hours. Zerathi dropships rose from the surface of Earth, carrying soldiers who had never known defeat until now. Many of them looked down at the blue planet with something that might have been fear. They left behind their dead. They left behind their equipment. They left behind their certainty that the Empire was invincible. When the last Zerathi ship reached orbit, the humans of Earth looked up at the sky and cheered. For the first time in 6 years, there were no aliens on their planet. For the first time in 6 years, they were free. General Tanaka stood in the ruins of New York City, the same place where High Lord Keithan had walked 6 years ago, stepping over human corpses without a second glance. Now it was Zerathi corpses that littered the streets. We did it, Colonel Wright said. His voice was with exhaustion. We actually did it. We won a battle, Tanaka corrected him. Not the war. They will be back. They will bring more ships, more soldiers, more weapons. This is not over. Then what do we do? Tanaka looked up at the sky at the distant lights of the Zereth fleet still orbiting their world. We prepare. We build. We get ready for the next fight. And we make sure that when they come back, we are not just defending our world. She smiled. It was not a kind smile. When they come back, we will be ready to take the fight to them. I mean ships, Colonel. Our own ships. The Zerathi thought they were occupying a primitive planet. They left us alone with their technology for 6 years. They let us learn. They let us grow. And now we are going to use everything we learned to build a fleet that will make them regret ever coming to Earth. In the days that followed, humanity began to rebuild, not the way things had been before that world was gone forever. They built something new, something designed for one purpose. War factories that had produced goods for the Empire were retold to build weapons. Mines that had extracted ore for alien markets now supplied human foundries. Scientists who had worked in secret now worked openly designing ships and weapons, based on everything they had learned from captured technology. Dr. David Chen stood in front of the first human-built spacecraft. It was small, ugly, and crude compared to Zarathi designs. But it worked, and it was just the beginning. "This is the prototype," he told Tanaka. "We're calling it the Revenge-class fighter. We can have 100 of them operational within a year, 1,000 within 2 years. What about larger ships? We're working on it. The breakthrough is the fold space drive. We figured out how they do it. Give us time, and we'll have ships that can travel between stars." Tanaka looked at the small, ugly spacecraft. It represented everything humanity had suffered for, everything they had lost, everything they were willing to sacrifice. "Time," she said. "How much time do we have?" "Our intelligence says the Empire will send a war fleet. A real one this time. Thousands of ships. They'll probably arrive within 2 years. Then we have 2 years." Tanaka turned to face her general staff. 2 years to build a fleet. 2 years to prepare our defenses. 2 years to turn Earth into a fortress that no alien armada can crack. She looked at each of them in turn. The Zarathi Empire has never lost a war. In 10,000 years, no species has ever defeated them. We are going to be the first, not because we are special, not because we are chosen, but because we have no other choice. If we lose, humanity dies. If we win, we live. It's that simple. She raised her fist. For every human who died in the invasion, for every human who died in the camps, for every child taken, every family destroyed, every life stolen, we will make them pay, and we will not stop until the Zarathi Empire is nothing but ash and memory. The officers raised their fists in response. Above them, the Zarathi fleet waited in orbit, watching, planning. They had sent a message to the Empire. Send reinforcements. The humans are not what we thought. The Empire had received the message, and the Empire was sending a response. A war fleet was being assembled. 12,000 ships, enough firepower to destroy a dozen planets, the largest military force the Empire had deployed in centuries. They were coming to destroy humanity once and for all. They did not know that humanity was counting on exactly that. 2 years after the uprising, the Zarathi Empire sent its answer. High Admiral Thraxus stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Judgment, and watched his armada assemble. 12,000 warships, carrying 2 million soldiers, armed with enough weapons to crack continents. It was the largest military force the Empire had deployed in 500 years. The last time such a fleet had been assembled, it had been to crush a rebellion of 7 allied species. That war had lasted 3 months. This one, Thraxus expected, would last 3 days. He was an old warrior, nearly 400 years old, with a record of victories that stretched back centuries. He had never lost a battle. He had never retreated. He had never shown mercy to an enemy, and none had ever been shown to him. When the reports had come from Earth, reports of impossible human weapons, of Zarathi soldiers dying by the thousands, of a forced evacuation, he had not believed them. Humans were primitives, cattle. The failure at Earth must have been caused by incompetent commanders, nothing more. He would correct that failure personally. "All ships report ready, High Admiral," his flag captain reported. "The fleet awaits your command." The Thraxus nodded slowly. "Begin the fold space jump. We arrive at Earth in 12 hours. I want the fleet in attack formation before we emerge from fold space. And our orders regarding the humans." The High Admiral's black eyes gleamed with cold satisfaction. "Extermination complete and total. We will burn their cities, destroy their infrastructure, and kill every last one of them. This species has proven itself too dangerous to enslave. Therefore, it will be eliminated." The Eternal Judgment entered fold space, followed by 12,000 ships of war. Earth would pay for its rebellion in blood. On Earth, General Yuki Tanaka received the news she had been expecting. "Long-range sensors have detected a massive fold space signature," Colonel Wright reported. "Estimated time of arrival? 11 hours. How many ships?" "We count approximately 12,000. The room went silent. Earth's newly built fleet numbered just over 300 ships. They were outnumbered 40 to 1. Tanaka showed no emotion. She had known this was coming. She had planned for it. "Begin Operation Harvest," she ordered. For 2 years, Earth had been preparing for this moment, not just building ships, though they had built hundreds of them. From small fighters to massive battle cruisers, they had also been building something else, something the Zarathi would never expect. Deep beneath the surface of the moon, in hidden facilities built by human hands, weapons of unimaginable power waited in silence. Orbital defense platforms circled Earth, armed with weapons based on captured Zarathi technology, but improved by human innovation. Mines floated in carefully planned patterns around the solar system, invisible until they activated. And there was something else, something that had never been built before. A weapon so devastating that even its creators were afraid of it. They called it the Sun Gun. Dr. David Chen had designed it based on a simple principle. The sun was essentially an infinite source of energy. If that energy could be focused, directed, concentrated into a beam, it could destroy anything. The sun gun did not shoot projectiles or energy bolts. It shot a piece of the sun itself. "Are all systems ready?" Tanaka asked. "All platforms armed and operational," Chen reported. "The sun gun is charged and ready. The fleet is in position. We are as ready as we will ever be." Tanaka looked at the tactical display. 300 ships against 12,000. It seemed impossible. But then again, so had everything else humanity had accomplished. "All personnel, all ships, all stations," she broadcast. "This is General Tanaka. In approximately 11 hours, the largest enemy fleet in galactic history will arrive to destroy us. They believe we are primitive. They believe we are weak. They believe we cannot possibly defeat them." She paused. "They are wrong. 2 years ago, we rose up against our oppressors with weapons made in secret and hatred forged in suffering. We drove them from our world. We showed them that humanity will never submit, never surrender, never stop fighting. Today, we will show them something else." Her voice hardened. "Today, we will show them what happens when you threaten the existence of the human race. Today, we will teach them that there are some enemies you should never wake. Today, we will make them understand why their ancestors feared the darkness." She raised her hand. "All ships, all platforms, all weapon systems prepare for battle. This is the day we have worked for. This is the moment that will decide whether humanity lives or dies. And I promise you this, whatever happens today, the Zarath Empire will never forget the price they paid for attacking Earth. Thank you this video. And I promise you this." She lowered her hand. "Remember who we fight for. Remember every human who died under their rule. Remember, and let your memory become their nightmare." Tanaka out. The hours passed slowly. On Earth, people gathered in the streets, looking up at the sky. They knew what was coming. They knew that the next few hours would determine the fate of their species. Many prayed. Many held their families close. Many simply waited in silence, watching the stars. In the fleet, soldiers and sailors made their final preparations. Some wrote letters to loved ones. Some checked their weapons one last time. Some sat in silence, thinking about what they were about to do. Captain Sarah Chen, Dr. Chen's daughter, commander of the battle cruiser Remember, stood on her bridge and watched the countdown timer. The Remember was the flagship of humanity's fleet, the largest and most powerful ship they had ever built. It had been named for everyone who had died during the occupation, every human who had suffered, every human who had been killed. "Captain," her sensor officer said, "fold space signatures detected. Multiple contacts." "How many?" "Thousands. Ma'am, they're early." Sarah took a deep breath. "All hands, battle stations. This is it." The Zarath fleet emerged from fold space in perfect formation, a wall of ships stretching across millions of kilometers. Their weapons were already charged, their shields already raised. They expected resistance. They did not expect to lose. High Admiral Straxus surveyed the battlefield from his command throne. His sensors showed the human fleet 300 ships, clustered around their homeworld like insects around a nest. "Pathetic," he said. "Is this really all they have managed to build? 300 ships against 12,000. They must know they cannot win. Perhaps they hope to negotiate." His flag captain suggested, "Negotiate?" Theothraxis laughed. It was a cold, empty sound. "There will be no negotiation. There will be no mercy. These creatures murdered our soldiers, destroyed our installations, and humiliated the Empire. They will die screaming. Every last one of them." He leaned forward. All ships, advance, destroy everything. The Zereth fleet moved forward, a tide of death rolling toward Earth, and then the first mine detonated. It was a small weapon, no larger than a ground vehicle. It had been floating in space for months, invisible to sensors, waiting. When the first Zereth cruiser passed within range, it activated. The explosion was nuclear. The cruiser's shields held against the blast itself. But the mine had never been designed to destroy ships with its explosion. It had been designed to create debris. Thousands of metal fragments, each one traveling at a significant fraction of the speed of light, slammed into the cruiser's shields. The shields flickered, struggled, and failed. The cruiser exploded, and then another mine detonated. And another, and another. Mines, the flag captain shouted. The humans have mined the entire approach, raised shields to maximum. Destroy those weapons before. Another explosion. Another cruiser destroyed. The Zerethi fleet had run into the first of Earth's surprises. The minefield was not random. It had been designed by military scientists who had spent 2 years studying Zerethi ship movements, calculating optimal placement, creating a web of death that was almost impossible to navigate. In the first 10 minutes of the battle, the Zerathi lost 300 ships. They had not even reached firing range. Thraxus stared at his tactical display in disbelief. How is this possible? Our sensors detected nothing. The mines are shielded, sir. They only become visible when they activate. Then we push through. We accept the losses and push through. The Zerathi fleet continued its advance. Slower now, more cautious. Ships detonated around them as they moved. But they pressed forward. They had the numbers to absorb the losses. They would reach Earth eventually, and then the human fleet attacked. 300 ships launched from Earth's orbit, moving at speeds the Zerathi had never seen. Human ships were smaller, faster, and far more maneuverable than their alien counterparts. They darted between Zerothi capital ships like insects, firing weapons that the Empire had no defense against. The scatterfire technology that Dr. Chen had developed 2 years ago had been refined, improved, and weaponized beyond anything the Zerathi could have imagined. Human weapons did not fire single projectiles. They fired clouds of destruction that could not be predicted or blocked. The Remember led the charge. Captain Sarah Chen stood on her bridge watching Zerathi ships die. Target the command ships, she ordered. Take out their leadership and the fleet will fall into chaos. Yes, Captain. The Remember's main guns fired. A Zerathi battlecruiser's shields collapsed under the assault. The ship exploded in a ball of fire. Another target, Sarah said. Keep firing. The battle raged across thousands of kilometers. Zereth ships fell by the hundreds, but they kept coming. Their numbers were simply too great. For every ship the humans destroyed, 10 more took its place. We're taking losses, Sarah's tactical officer reported. We've lost 40 ships. Keep fighting. We just need to buy time. Time for what, Captain? Sarah smiled. You'll see. In orbit around Earth, the defense platforms came online. They were massive structures, each one bristling with weapons that had taken years to design and build. They opened fire on the advancing Zerathi fleet, adding their firepower to the battle. But the real weapon was still waiting. General Tanaka watched the battle from her command center on Earth. The fleet was fighting well, but they could not hold forever. The Zerathi were pushing through, absorbing their losses, advancing toward Earth with relentless determination. It's time, she said. Activate the sun gun. On the far side of the sun, hidden from Zerothi sensors, a massive device powered up. It had been built in secret, transported in pieces, assembled by engineers who knew they might not live to see it used. It was humanity's final weapon, their last hope. The sun gun drew power from the sun itself, focusing solar energy through a series of amplifiers and lenses until it became something else. A beam of pure destruction that nothing in the known universe could survive. Dr. Chen watched the power readings climb. Target locked on the enemy flagship. Firing in 3, 2, 1. A beam of light shot across the solar system. It traveled at the speed of light itself, crossing the distance between the sun and the Zerathi fleet in minutes. High Admiral Thraxus never saw it coming. The eternal judgment simply ceased to exist. One moment, it was there. The largest and most powerful warship in the Zerathi fleet. The next moment, there was nothing but expanding gas and debris. The beam did not stop. It continued through the fleet, destroying everything in its path. 300 ships were vaporized in a single shot. The Zarathi fleet stopped. They had never seen anything like this. No weapon in the galaxy could do what they had just witnessed. It was impossible. It was terrifying. And it was just the beginning. "Fire again," Tanaka ordered. "Keep firing until they retreat, or they die." The sun gun fired 3 more times. Each shot destroyed hundreds of Zarathi ships. The fleet that had arrived with 12,000 vessels was reduced to less than 8,000 in minutes. Commander Texville, who had survived the ground battle 2 years ago, stood on the bridge of his cruiser and watched the destruction around him. The High Admiral was dead. The command structure was shattered. Ships were dying by the hundreds. "We have to retreat," he said. "We cannot fight this retreat." His tactical officer said, "We cannot retreat. The Empire will understand when they see these recordings. We are not fighting a primitive species. We are fighting something else entirely. Something that should not exist." He gave the order. "All ships, withdraw. I repeat, all ships, withdraw. Fall back to safe distance and regroup." The remaining Zarathi ships began to retreat, their fold space drives carrying them away from the massacre, but the human fleet pursued. Captain Sarah Chen pushed her engines to maximum. The Remember shot forward, closing the distance between itself and the fleeing enemy. "They're retreating," her tactical officer said. "We've won. We haven't won until they're destroyed," Sarah replied. "Target the command ships. Don't let them escape." The Remember caught up to Commander Thexville's cruiser at the edge of the solar system. The alien ship was damaged, its shields failing, its weapons depleted. Thexville watched the human battlecruiser approach on his view screen. He recognized it, the ship called Remember. He understood suddenly why they had named it that. "This is Commander Thexville of the Zarathi Imperial Fleet." He broadcast on an open channel. "I offer my surrender. I will give you any information you want. I will. This is Captain Chen of the Remember." Sarah's voice cut through his transmission. "We don't want your surrender. We don't want your information. Then what do you want?" There was a pause. "We want you to watch." The Remember fired. Thexville's cruiser exploded. The battle was over. Of the 12,000 ships that had come to destroy Earth, fewer than 4,000 escaped. The rest were debris, scattered across the solar system, a graveyard that would drift through space for eternity. Humanity had won. In her command center, General Tanaka received the final reports. The fleet had lost 107 ships. Thousands of human sailors had died, but Earth was safe. The invasion had been defeated. "What now, General?" Colonel Wright asked. Tanaka looked at the tactical display. It showed the retreating Zarath ships limping away toward their empire. It also showed something else. The navigation data they had captured from destroyed enemy vessels. Every Zarathi world, every colony, every military base, every trade route. "Now," she said quietly, "we go to them." She turned to face her staff. "For 6 years, they occupied our world. They killed billions of us. They made us slaves. And when we freed ourselves, they sent a fleet to exterminate us. They wanted to wipe humanity from the galaxy." Her voice was hard as steel. "We're going to return the favor. Not because we want revenge, though we do, but because as long as the Zarathi Empire exists, they will keep coming. They will keep trying to destroy us. The only way to be truly safe is to make sure they can never threaten anyone again." She pulled up a star map. "This is the Zarath Empire. 400 worlds, trillions of lives. They built their civilization on conquest and slavery. They believed they were invincible. They were wrong." She pointed to a world at the edge of the map. "We start here. A minor colony. Minimal defenses. We take it. We strip it of resources. We move on. Then the next world and the next. We don't stop until we reach their home world." General Wright said carefully, "Are you talking about conquering the entire Zarathi Empire?" "No." Tanaka's eyes were cold. "I'm talking about destroying it." The room was silent. "They made us what we are," Tanaka said. "They taught us to hate. They taught us to fight. They taught us that mercy is weakness and compassion is death. Well, they were good teachers. And now they're going to learn from their own lessons. She raised her hand. "Prepare the fleet. We leave within the month. The hunters have become the hunted." And in the depths of space, the survivors of the Zereth Armada fled toward home, carrying news of their impossible defeat. They did not know that the humans were following. They did not know that the war was just beginning, and they did not know that by the time it was over, their empire would be nothing but ash. The Zereth Empire had stood for 10,000 years. It had conquered 400 worlds. It had crushed every species that dared to resist. It had never known defeat, never known fear, never known what it felt like to be prey instead of predator. Now it was learning. 3 years after the Battle of Earth, the human fleet arrived at the first Zereth colony world. It was called Vexthal, a mining planet on the edge of the Empire. The garrison there numbered 10,000 soldiers. They had heard stories about what had happened at Earth, but they did not believe them. Humans were primitives. Whatever had happened at Earth must have been exaggerated. They discovered the truth when human ships emerged from fold space and began their attack. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, Vexthal belonged to humanity. The garrison was dead, the mining facilities were captured, and a message was broadcast across the Empire. "We are coming." General Yuki Tanaka stood on the bridge of the Remember. She had taken personal command of the flagship after Captain Sarah Chen had been promoted to lead a battle group. Tanaka looked at the conquered world on her view screen and felt nothing but cold satisfaction. "Send the workers home," she ordered. "Any non-Zerethi species on this planet is free to leave. Provide them with transport to wherever they want to go." Her aide, Colonel Wright, nodded. "And the Zereth civilians?" "There are no Zerethi civilians. Every adult Zereth is trained for combat from childhood. They are all soldiers, even the ones who don't wear uniforms. They stay." "What do we do with them?" Tanaka turned to face him. Her eyes were hard. "The same thing they did to us." The Zerathia of Vexthal were put to work in the mines they had once overseen. They dug ore for their new human masters. They labored under the same conditions they had imposed on countless conquered species, and they learned what it felt like to be slaves. Some humans objected. They said humanity should be better than its enemies. They said revenge would only make humans as bad as the Zerathi. Tanaka listened to them. She understood their arguments. She even respected them. But she did not change her orders. "We are not doing this because we enjoy it," she told her critics. "We are doing this because it is necessary. The Zerathi understand only one thing: power. If we show them mercy, they will see it as weakness. They will regroup, rebuild, and come for us again. The only way to end this war is to break them so completely that they can never recover." She looked at the photographs on her wall, the thousands of human faces, the dead of Earth. "Besides," she said quietly, "they earned this." The human offensive continued. World after world fell. The Empire tried to mount a defense, but they were fighting an enemy unlike any they had faced before. Human tactics were unpredictable, brutal, and utterly without mercy. Human soldiers did not surrender. When surrounded, they fought to the death and took as many enemies with them as possible. Human ships did not retreat. When outgunned, they charged forward, turning themselves into weapons. The Zerathi military code had rules about warfare. Humans did not care about their rules. On the colony world of Texnar, a Zerathi garrison commander offered to surrender. He expected to be taken prisoner, treated according to the customs of war. Instead, the human commander simply said, "We don't take prisoners," and ordered the attack to continue. The garrison was wiped out to the last soldier. Word spread through the Empire. The humans were coming, and they showed no mercy. They did not negotiate. They did not accept surrender. They killed everyone who fought against them, and enslaved everyone who didn't. Fear spread faster than the human fleet. On Zerothi worlds that had never seen human soldiers, civilians began to panic. They had heard the stories: impossible weapons, suicidal tactics, enemies who laughed as they died. The humans were not just conquerors. They were a plague, a nightmare, a force of destruction that could not be reasoned with or stopped. The Imperial Council met in emergency session on Zereth Prime, the capital world of the Empire. The council chamber had seen 10,000 years of victory. Now, it saw something new: despair. "We must sue for peace," one counselor said. "The humans cannot be defeated. We must offer them whatever they want in exchange for ending this war. What do they want? Another counselor asked. We have sent diplomatic messages. They do not respond. We have offered terms. They ignore them. We have tried to negotiate. They simply continue attacking. Then what do we do? No one had an answer. High Lord Kevin, the same commander who had led the original invasion of Earth, now ancient and broken, rose from his seat. He had been called out of retirement to advise the council. He had seen the humans at their weakest. He understood what they had become. There is nothing we can do, he said. His voice was tired, hollow. I conquered their world 8 years ago. I looked at them and saw animals. I was wrong. They were not animals. They were sleeping predators. We woke them, and now they will not stop until we are extinct. There must be something. There is nothing. Keith Van's black eyes were empty. I watched a human woman beat her fists against my armor in New York 8 years ago. She was crying, asking why we had done this to her people. Do you know what I told her? I told her we did it because we wanted her planet. Because that was all the reason the Empire needed. He laughed bitterly. Well, now they want our planets. And they have exactly the same reason we had. We taught them this. We created them, and now they will destroy us. He sat down heavily. Prepare the defenses of Zereth Prime. It is the only world that matters now. Make the humans pay dearly for it. But know this. When they come, and they will come, it will be the end. The council sat in silence. 4 years after leaving Earth, the human fleet arrived at Zereth Prime. The capital world of the Empire was beautiful. A planet of silver cities and crystal towers, home to 30 billion Zerithi. It had never been attacked in 10,000 years. It had been protected by the mightiest fleet in the galaxy, defended by the most advanced weapons ever created. None of that mattered anymore. General Tanaka looked at the planet on her view screen. This was it. The heart of the Empire that had conquered Earth, that had killed billions of humans, that had made her people slaves. After 8 years, she had finally reached it. Fleet status, she said. All ships in position, General. We have 1,200 vessels. The Zereth have approximately 4,000 defending the planet, and the orbital defense is extensive. This will be the hardest battle we have ever fought. Tanaka nodded. She had expected nothing less. The Zerithi would throw everything they had into defending their homeworld. They would fight with the desperation of a species facing extinction. Good. She wanted them to fight. She wanted them to feel what her people had felt during the invasion of Earth. The hopelessness, the despair, the knowledge that no matter how hard they struggled, they could not win. Open a channel to the planet, she ordered. All frequencies channel open. General Tanaka stepped forward. She was 60 years old now. Her hair was gray, her face lined with age and stress, but her eyes were still sharp, still hard, still burning with the fury that had driven her for 8 years. People of Zereth Prime, she said. I am General Yuki Tanaka of the United Human Fleet. 8 years ago, your empire invaded my world. You killed billions of my people. You enslaved the survivors. You treated us like animals. She paused. Now we have come to your world. We have destroyed your fleets, conquered your colonies, and broken your empire. And now we are here at the heart of everything you built. Her voice was cold. You had 10,000 years to learn compassion. You chose cruelty instead. You had 400 worlds to share with the galaxy. You chose conquest instead. You had the power to lift up other species. You chose to crush them instead. She raised her hand. You made your choices. Now we make ours. The Zerathi Empire ends today. Your civilization ends today. Everything you built, everything you achieved, everything you were, it ends today. She lowered her hand. We are not here to negotiate. We are not here to accept surrender. We are here to do what you tried to do to us. Wipe you from existence. You will receive exactly the mercy you showed us. She turned to her tactical officer. None. The transmission ended. The Battle of Zereth Prime began. It was the largest space battle in galactic history. Over 5,000 ships engaged in a conflict that lasted 48 hours. The Zerothi fought with everything they had. Knowing that this was their final stand, human ships fought with the same ferocity they had shown across 400 worlds. Knowing that victory here would mean the end of the war, Ships exploded in clouds of fire. Weapons tore through shields and armor. Debris fields spread across millions of kilometers. Thousands died on both sides. But slowly, inevitably, the Zerthi defense crumbled. Their ships were powerful, but human tactics were unpredictable. Their weapons were advanced, but human technology had evolved over 8 years of war. Their soldiers were brave, but human soldiers did not fear death. One by one, the Zerthi warships fell. The orbital defense platforms were destroyed. The minefield was swept away, and finally, the path to the planet was clear. General Tanaka gave the order. Begin the bombardment. The human fleet opened fire on Zereth Prime. The first salvo targeted military installations, defense batteries, command centers, weapons factories, all of them destroyed in minutes. The second salvo targeted infrastructure, power plants, transportation hubs, communication networks, the systems that kept a civilization running, reduced to rubble. And then the third salvo began. Cities burned. 30 billion Zereth screamed as fire fell from the sky. The crystal towers shattered. The silver cities melted. Everything the Empire had built over 10,000 years was consumed in a single day. Some humans in the fleet looked away. They had signed up to fight a war, not to commit genocide. They had believed in justice, not extermination. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of her battle cruiser and watched the destruction with a stone face. She thought about her father, Dr. David Chen, who had died 2 years ago, killed in a Zerathi ambush during the campaign. She thought about her mother, who had died in the invasion of Earth when Sarah was just a teenager. She thought about everyone she had lost. Is this right? Her tactical officer asked quietly. Killing billions of civilians? Sarah considered the question. They killed billions of ours, she said finally. When we were helpless, when we had done nothing to threaten them, they invaded our home and murdered our people, because they wanted our planet, because that was all the reason they needed. She turned to face her officer. I don't know if this is right. I'm not sure there is a right in a war like this, but I know this. As long as the Zereth Empire exists, they will never stop trying to destroy us. They will rebuild. They will rearm. They will come for Earth again. The only way to protect humanity is to make sure they can never threaten anyone again. She looked back at the burning planet. So, no. I don't know if this is right, but I know it's necessary. And I know that I'd rather live with this guilt than watch my children die in the next Zerathi invasion. The bombardment lasted 3 days. When it was over, Zereth Prime was a dead world. The atmosphere was choked with ash. The oceans boiled. The cities were craters. 30 billion Zerathi were gone. Not conquered, not enslaved, but erased from existence. The empire that had stood for 10,000 years was finished. General Tanaka walked through the ruins of what had once been the Imperial Palace. The crystal towers had collapsed into piles of slag. The council chamber where the Empire's leaders had plotted the conquest of galaxies was now a hole in the ground. She found the body of High Lord Kefan in the rubble. The old warrior had not fled, had not hidden. He had stood on the steps of the palace as the bombs fell, watching the death of everything he had built. Tanaka looked down at his corpse for a long moment. You were right, she said quietly. That day in New York, when you told that woman why you invaded Earth, you had something we wanted. That was your reason. Now you know our reason. She turned and walked away. The war was over. In the years that followed, humanity did not become conquerors. They had learned too well what conquest led to. Instead, they became something else, guardians. The species that had been enslaved by the Zerathi Empire were freed. The worlds that had been occupied were returned to their original inhabitants. The technology that had been hoarded by the Empire was shared freely. Humanity built a new order in the galaxy. Not an empire, but a confederation. A community of free species working together, protecting each other. They called it the Human Concord. The Concord had one unbreakable rule. Never again. Never again would any species be allowed to conquer another. Never again would any power be permitted to build an empire on the backs of slaves. Never again would the galaxy know the horrors that the Zerathi had inflicted. And if anyone tried, the humans would stop them. Across the galaxy, species looked toward the small blue world that had done the impossible. Some felt hope The monsters that had oppressed them for generations were finally gone. Others felt fear. If the humans could destroy the Zerothi, what else might they be capable of? Both reactions were appropriate. General Yuki Tanaka lived to see the Concord established. She lived to see the first generation of humans who had never known war, never known occupation, never known what it was like to be slaves. She lived to see humanity take its place among the stars, not as conquerors, but as protectors. She died at the age of 92, surrounded by her family, at peace. Her last words were simple: remember, always remember. And humanity did remember. They remembered the invasion, the occupation, the dark years. They remembered the uprising, the war, the terrible price of victory. They remembered what they had done to survive the things they were proud of, and the things that still haunted them. But most of all, they remembered why they had fought. Not for conquest, not for power, not for revenge, though revenge had been part of it. In the beginning, they had fought because they had no choice. They had fought because the alternative was extinction. They had fought because giving up was not something humans knew how to do. On Earth, in every city, monuments stood to those who had died. Billions of names carved in stone, remembered forever. School children learned the history of the war, not as glorification, but as warning. This is what happens when species treat each other as cattle. This is the cost of cruelty. This is why we must be better. And in the deepest vaults of the human Concord, locked away where only a few could access it, the complete records of the Zerathi Empire were preserved. Every crime, every atrocity, every world they had conquered, and species they had enslaved. A reminder of why the Empire had to fall. A warning of what humanity was capable of, if pushed too far. In the end, the Zerathi had been right about one thing. They had said that humans were different from other species. They had said that humans had a capacity for violence that was unusual. Even by galactic standards, they had just been wrong about what that meant. It meant that humanity could be the greatest threat the galaxy had ever seen, or the greatest protector. It all depended on how they were treated. The Zerathi had chosen to make enemies of humanity. They had invaded, conquered, enslaved, and murdered. They had pushed humans to the breaking point, and then pushed harder. And humanity had broken, but not in the way the Zerath expected. Humanity had broken free, broken through, broken their enemies so thoroughly that nothing remained but dust and memory. The galaxy had learned a lesson that day, an ancient human truth spoken in 1,000 languages across 1,000 worlds. Do not disturb the sleeping bear. Do not poke the wasp nest. Do not, under any circumstances, give humanity a reason to fight. Because humans never forgot. Humans never forgave. And when humans decided something needed to be destroyed, it was destroyed completely, utterly, without mercy. The Zerathi Empire had invaded Earth. Humanity had obliterated them,